machines that have already been put in place.
Good afternoon. This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico. Zooming in to start working on oil painting now titled Mr. Gone. Alright, I've got some light blue, some light purple, some white, some ultramarine blue, and some black mixed up, and I'm just going to start playing with some of the forms. So here we go.
To a single informational point. The passing of every day, every week, brings us closer and closer to a kind of informational tangentiality with each other. Well, I believe, following the dictum that nothing is unannounced, that we can, from what is happening to us now, extrapolate toward this adventure in transformational novelty that is now looming ahead of us with such presence that it casts an enormous shadow over the three-dimensional landscape of historical becoming. And we as moderns are very conflicted about this, because the only vocabulary we have to deal with something like this is the vocabulary of discredited religion. Before the rise of science, before the rise of technology, when religions presided over a much more slow-moving and easily managed world, great thinkers of all persuasions, through meditation and divine inspiration, whatever, saw that man's journey was a journey from the demonic to the divine, and that history was somehow the stage of human redemption. That view died with the rise of secular capitalism and industrial democracy. And yet, here in this, at the height of the trajectory of the enterprise of science and materialism, news comes from the rainforest, from the Aboriginal peoples of the world, that there are technologies of a different sort that have been in place since at least the last ice age. These are neurotechnologies, quasi-symbiotic relationships with plants, pharmacological approaches to manipulating human memory, aspiration, aesthetic concerns, so forth and so on. These psychedelic intimations have been presented to us as the naive suppositions of primitive, the landscape of the Jungian unconscious, chaotic events happening in the human brain-mind system, so forth and so on. These are all reductionist explanations. I believe that what these psychedelic states are actually ascents to a higher order of information. And by ascents, I mean the word in a dimensional context, as a mathematical idea, that here we are deployed in a three-dimensional matrix. The past fades into unknowability. The future fades into unknowability. And only the crudest and least interesting of processes, like the rising of the sun and the tides, can be propagated into the future with confidence. What shamans see, in contrast to this, is a hyperdimensional universe of information. They see the past, the origin, and they see the goal, the culmination, the place where the Ouroboros snake takes its tail in its mouth. We who are locked in linear history don't have this perspective. what we have instead is immense anxiety about the future. We map the unknowable future onto the presumed experience of our own death, and vice versa. And we build up a universe that is characterized by existential abysses, the unknown future, the inevitability of death, and the impossibility of intellectually assimilating what that means. Shamanism isn't like this. Shamanism is a fractal point of view. What fractals are structures that have their subsets embedded in them. So the course of the history of an entire people can be known by looking at the history of an individual or a family. All subsets refer to levels above and below them. This is entirely different from the kind of linear history that we get in a hierarchical scientific society. It is more characteristic of experience. And this is a very important point, because the two phenomena that I tried to call your attention to that argue for hope are the self-evident accumulation of novelty and the self-evident acceleration of that accumulation of novelty. Well, now notice the phrase self-evident. These are not things that you have to study advanced mathematics to perceive. These are not things revealed to the holders of advanced degrees. This is stuff that one can tell by feeling into the world. The structure of linear society has disempowered the individual. We are all now, we have bought the Hobbesian notion that we are social atoms in a vaster machine than ourselves with a greater purpose than we can know. This is actually hogwash. As you move away from the human individual, the consciousness about what is happening becomes more and more low-grade and amoeba-like. You have the consciousness of the Giuliani administration, the consciousness of the American government. You see, as you widen the bend, it becomes more and more primitive, more and more simply a matter of stimulus and response. But you, the supposed irrelevant atom at the center of this process, make very subtle judgments, take in information of all sorts, compare, contrast, weigh, understand, seek evidence. This is the subtlest thinking that's going on. But we don't reclaim our own minds. We look for institutional guidance, and yet it was institutions that guided us to this moment. So the character then of this next advance into novelty is, from my point of view, now easily discerned. It is boundary dissolution. This is what is happening. This is why great wealth and great poverty must come to terms with each other. It's why the first world and the third world must come to terms with each other. It's why gays and straights must come to terms with each other. Boundary dissolution is what is happening. And this has been going on for a long time, but it affected our peripheral technologies first, almost without us noticing it. We've gone from a world where information moves at the speed of a horse's gallop to a world where all information is cotangent. Space is only an illusion of the please. Everyone else, with their computer networks and their connections, knows that the world has become a kind of virtual point. And yet still we maintain the most toxic of all the fictions to come out of the dominator experience. the fiction of the individual ego. This maintenance of the fiction of ego is what is exacerbating a smooth transition into a new world order. Because people have one foot in the dematerialized, collectivist, virtual, feeling-toned, experience-based future. But they also have one foot in the in the consumer fetish, objectified, constipated, linear, acquisitive, class-conscious, sex-conscious, race-conscious path. And each one of us is a union of these opposites. Each one of us is trying to make some kind of a alloy of our hideously dysfunctional cultural past and the incredibly compelling yet frightening, dimensionless, boundaryless, polymorphic, polyamorous future. And to my mind, then, the role that psychedelics play in all this is critical because they are catalysts for change. If you are not moving as fast as the general wave of novelty, psychedelics will bring you up to speed. Society will go from being utterly incomprehensible and horrifying to simply being horrifying. If you are up to speed, and you with the cultural wave, and you then avail yourself of psychedelics, you become a force for spreading calm, spreading understanding. Because make no mistake about it, as we close distance with the transcendental object at the end of time, there is going to be a lot of vibration accumulate on the superstructures of the social airfoil. If the airfoil cannot be redesigned in flight as we approach this barrier, we will be ripped to pieces. This is, H.G. Wells said in 1905, history is a race between education and catastrophe. And it is going to be a photo finish. If we end up a smear through the shale and nature concludes that intelligence is something never again to put into the hopper, then it will be an enormous tragedy because we didn't go down without a struggle. We have the technologies, the ideology, the compassion for each other and caring world. We are not a lost cause yet, but we may end up a lost cause. And people then say, well, what should be done? The Tolstoyan question, what then should be done? Well, I came up through the whole Berkeley thing in the 60s and all that, and I'm very wary of hortatory political prescriptions for what should be done. I mean, we saw that the best impulses in Marxism turn into the most horrifyingly regimented and totalitarian society. Goodwill is not enough. So what is to be done? I think the answer is not only nothing, but considerably less than nothing. And what I mean by that is that the real solutions to our problems lie in a series of negatives. Do not believe. Ideology has poisoned this planet. Ideology is bankrupt. It's a skin game. It's a shell game. It's only for Marx and Marx. It is beneath your dignity as a body to get mixed up in ideology. I mean, after all, where is it writ large that talking monkeys should understand the nature of being anyway? So belief is an incredible cop-out actual truth-seeking, because belief precludes believing in its opposite. And so this is a self-limitation. You become your own cause. And the ideologies of the 20th century are so shoddy and hobbled together, or toxic to human values, they're not worth believing in anyway. So deconditioning ourselves from belief. Some people call it cynicism. I call it good sense. I'm not a cynical person, but I know shit from Shinola, and I don't expect people who don't to get a lot of respect from the rest of us. I mean, what does it mean if you're an optimist, and that means you can't proclaim the difference between boot polish and excreta? It's ridiculous. Okay, don't believe. The next thing which comes out of that, and is an even stronger prohibition, don't follow. Following is a tasteless position to find yourself in. Pets follow, vice presidents follow, and bad acts follow. So, why follow? All of these gurus, geishas, roshis, and rishis are simply flim-flam artists. They've had thousands of years to get these cons together and run them on you. Believe me, I know, I'm a recovering Catholic. You have to fight your way free of belief, and then do not follow. Do not follow. It's an obsolete, tasteless thing, and there's no human dignity in it whatsoever. Then, a harder one, a more radical one, the one that might get me shot. Do not, in some profoundly metaphysical sense, consume. Do not consume. For obvious reasons, and then not so obvious reasons. The obvious reasons are that the fetish for objects made of matter is wrecking the planet. If everybody on Earth had what the people in the front row here have, there wouldn't be enough metal, glass, plastic, and petroleum in the planet to provide that kind of lifestyle to the billions of people who now aspire. None of this stuff brings happiness anyway. I recently had the experience of having my 75 Ford Granada blow up on me in the middle of the night. And so I had to buy a new car. So I went down a year and up a brand, and I got a 74 BMW. And it cost me $2,000. And I guarantee you, once you have the little thing on the steering wheel, the quaternity sign, you don't need the $90,000 model. What we should all do is buy antiques. Don't consume anything which hasn't already been made. There's a lot of shit that's been made. It's all over the place. I see it in Manhattan going for a bundle. What we need to do, you see, is retool our values so that what is new is odious, tasteless, déplacé, embarrassing, and not to be found in the better home. The older things are, the better they are. Here's a 50-year-old chair, fine. Here's a 500-year-old chair, how much better? We need to cease to consume, and I'm somewhat facetious in suggesting that we all become aficionados of Chippendale furniture and that sort of thing. That isn't the plan either. But the endless fetishism for consumer objects is wrecking the planet. And then finally, well no, not finally, there's one after this, but another negative, and this is a slightly more difficult to follow, requires a little cogitation, and it's insidious. We shouldn't watch. We shouldn't watch. Watching is some kind of voyeuristic, sadomasochistic peculiarity that we are permitting ourselves because we think there are too many of us to do. But I don't think this is true. I think watching is an incredibly disempowering thing. Millions of people live half-awake, larval lives, watching 6.5 hours of TV a day. And as long as they stay in their homes, shopping by phone and fax, everybody is happy. But they participate not at all in the society. They're the marks, and they consume. They consume the media, the entertainment, the clothes, the styles, the brands. They are the morons who are keeping this system running. And I assume that largely the people here tonight are not. We're the people who grind out all this stuff. I mean, I feel I do this. I write books. I produce ideas. They are grits for the marketplace. Harper and Bantam don't care what I'm saying. What they care about is how the books are selling. Product number 3245A sub F. How is it doing in the marketplace? Do not watch, because when you're watching, you're not at the center of things. Largely what I'm talking about here is reclaiming experience. Reclaiming experience. This is what's been taken from us. This is why the new music and dance culture is so important. This is why drug culture is so important. This is why the celebration of sexual minorities is so important. This is all about coming to grips with who you really are and how you really feel, and then experiencing it. You are not owned. It is not he or she or them or it that you belong to. And we have been told that we have to fit in, we have to make sense. This is not true. We are creating a world that celebrates diversity, that celebrates the uniqueness of every person. The complexification of our species is a process directly dependent on the complexity that we each bring to the process. The diversity that is spreading through society is a concomitant to the boundary dissolution. And I really believe that science's inability to make sense of human beings in the world as part of nature, to make sense of art, love, hate, aspiration, fear. The failure to make sense of this is the failure to come to terms with the transcendental aspect of reality. We are the best evidence there is that something extraordinarily unusual is happening on this planet, and that it's not something which will go on for millions of years. It began about 20,000 years ago. It's a self-advancing, self-expanding, self-defining process, and it takes no prisoners. There is no going back. There is no going back from the momentum that history has imparted to the human imagination. There is only a going forward into what is called a forward escape through art, through design, through management and integration. That we have to push the art pedal to the floor. We have never designed our society. We have never managed our society or our lives. We have never tried to make what we were serve an aesthetic agenda. And that's why we've created a mess. In the absence of an aesthetic agenda, what we've created is Animal House on a global scale. So now it's time to pay the piper. And just in closing, the catalyst now is a combination of technology, solid-state technology, and pharmacology. The world that we are leaving behind, the world that failed us, was a world of ideology and mechanical technology. And the ideologies, one by one, are going down the tube. Marxism, Freudianism, fascism. They one by one will be discredited. They cannot sustain. And the mechanical technology cannot be sustained. They pollute, they dehumanize, they wreck the planet. What is coming into place is a world where drugs replace physiology. That's why drugs are so terrifying for those who oppose them. That's why they say you want to escape. You want to take drugs to escape. That's right. You want to escape. You want to escape fascism, communism, socialism, existentialism, phenomenology, positivism. All of this stuff. You want to escape ideology into the felt presence of the body, which means drugs and sex and syncopated music. And parallel to this development and happening in different sectors of society is the hardwiring of our imagination. The building of databases that we can access instantaneously that make the human past co-present with the now. The boundary dissolution that I'm talking about includes the division between past, present, and future. This is what it means to end Newtonian time. It means that the past, the present, and the future become a coextensive domain where everyone then awakens to the fact, which was always there to be observed, that there is not simply one past. There is nothing called the past. I have a past, you have a past. It's not the same past. Consequently, the futures we are going to are different. We create our own reality as a species and as an individual. And so what we are passing through here in the now, in this lecture, in the 20th century, is a moment
Oh wow,
of
ran out the clock. I've got 52 seconds left. So that's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, Mexico, working on oil painting Mr. Gone. Alright, I'm liking where that's headed. We got her a bright light purple, him a bright light blue, some sort of ultramarine glaze colors happening around throughout the rest of the picture plane that are making some interesting glaze layers of color. But that's it for the moment. Thanks for watching. Have a good night, Earth.
The central importance of human beings.